Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all for this afternoon's press conference, attending and viewing and listening. My duty here today is to raise a number of issues that have gripped our country over the last couple of weeks and have really brought out, as expected, the emotions within a lot of us throughout our country. It was a couple weeks ago I sat in the same spot and at the end of a press conference was asked questions by the members of the media who were present with respect to young Andrea Barrath at the time. At the time, we were all hoping, myself very much included, and praying for the safe return of young Miss Barrath. Unfortunately, a few days later, we all had to deal with the unfortunate and traumatic news that that was not to be, and that Miss Barrath's disappearance were turned out into the finding of her body and what then became a known murder. A number of issues have arisen since then, and I'm here today really to address the issue of two suspects who were in police custody, dying, it appears, whilst in police custody. As we are aware, these were two suspects who were held during the intervening period when there were live investigations and live operations taking place to locate Miss Barrath. This is Andrew Morris and Joel Belcon. These two gentlemen, as we all know now, passed away whilst in police custody or whilst under police responsibility. As I have always said, as the Minister of National Security, it is my position that no one is above the law. No one, there should never be any cover-up, and that everyone is subject to the parameters of the law. I've also said that it is this government's position that it will support the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and it does support the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service once it operates within the confines of the law. At this time, I've come here to address this issue. Obviously, the allegations that we're seeing swirling around in the public are matters that concern me as a Minister of National Security, that concern me as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, in particular with respect to these two individuals, Morris and Belcon. I have come here today to report what has been the government's position, what has the government done, what have I done as the Minister of National Security and the person charged with the responsibility of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, subject, of course, to the provisions of the Constitution, and in particular Section 123A of the Constitution. Yesterday, we awakened to see one of our daily newspapers publish most disturbing report of what is alleged to have taken place with respect to one of these individuals, Mr. Morris. Over the weekend, we also saw surfacing on social media what appears to be an autopsy report with respect to Mr. Morris. If what is said in that newspaper report of yesterday, that there is a video or video recordings of what may have taken place with respect to Mr. Morris whilst in police custody, I would expect that whoever is in possession of that video recording or recordings would take it to the relevant authorities for a proper and thorough investigation into the circumstances of what is reported to have been on this video recording or recordings. I have today had a meeting with the Commissioner of Police and the three acting Deputy Commissioners of Police. So I met with Mr. Griffith, the Commissioner of Police, as well as acting Deputy Commissioners of Police, Jacob, Lewis, and Archie this morning, to ask them and to get an account from them as to the allegations surrounding what is in the public domain with respect to Morris and Belcon. As a government, and in particular as the Minister of National Security, I will never encourage or condone any lawlessness. So I've come here now to give an account of my meeting this morning with the Commissioner of Police and the 3 acting Deputy Commissioners of Police. When I asked them what was taking place with respect to the death of these 2 individuals whilst in police custody, I was informed firstly that there is an active ongoing investigation by the Police Complaints Authority, and I'll come to that in a short while. I was also told that the following are the steps taken by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with respect to an investigation into the circumstances. 1, that the Professional Standards Bureau in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is an active participant in investigation. They've also appointed investigators from the 2 divisions where these gentlemen were, the Northern Division and the Northeastern Division. So investigators from those divisions are also part of the police investigation. I was also informed that officers from homicide have also been appointed to be part of the police investigation body, the body of police officers investigating these incidents. I was told that to date, as at this morning, 10 to 12 reports generated by the police coming out of these investigations have been sent to the PCA, the Police Complaints Authority. They've been provided, and that all reports generated out of this investigation by what I call a multi-divisional, multi-unit investigation in Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will be provided to the Police Complaints Authority. I was told that police officers also sustained injuries in the circumstances surrounding it. At this stage, I cannot say what took place, nor have I been provided with any report in writing as to what takes place. I also caution that from what I understand, there are active police investigations, and then I'll come to in a short while the PCA investigation that is also taking place. I was told, because I asked the frontal question, whether the police or any aspect of those bodies or units within the police service have been provided with any videos, and in particular the videos that seem to be reported by that newspaper yesterday. And I was told at this stage, when I met with them this morning, the answer is no, they do not have those videos in their possession. I was also told, when I asked, well, what happens going forward in the future? I was told that SORT, the IATF, and Guard and Emergency Branch are going to be some of the next units to be provided with body cameras by the Commissioner of Police and the administrative arm of the police service. So in short, what I was provided with are the details of the internal police investigations currently taking place and the composition of the teams of the police service who are looking into the matters surrounding the death of these 2 individuals. Subsequent to that, I had a telephone conversation with the director of the Police Complaints Authority to ascertain whether the Police Complaints Authority is doing any investigations into these matters, and I was informed by Director West that they in fact are. And I wanted to use the opportunity at this stage just to outline a few matters to the public through you with respect to how this matter should be dealt with by, as suggested by the government, or not suggested by the government, how the government views it. The first thing is to remind us that the Police Complaints Authority in its act is stated as, this act establishes an independent body to investigate criminal offences involving police officers, police corruption, and serious police misconduct, and for other related matters. So the body that the legislators in Trinidad and Tobago decided, I think as far back as 2007, to set up and constitutionally charged with the responsibility to deal with matters exactly as these is the PCA. And for me, it is important that it is an independent body. So the government should not interfere, but we're there really to resource it. I then want to draw to your attention a number of elements of the Act, the PCA Act, just so that the population is aware of the powers of the PCA, the functions of the PCA, and what it is that we require the PCA to do at this stage, and I'm sure they are already doing. Section 19 of the Act sets out very clearly the independence of the authority, and that the authority is not subject to the direction or control of any other person in the performance of its functions under Section 21 and the exercise of its powers under Section 22. That is why all I did was place a call to the director of the PCA, merely to establish whether what I had been told is in fact so, and the PCA are already actively investigating these incidents. I direct your attention to Section 21 of the Act, which sets out the functions of the authority. The functions of the authority are to, amongst other things, investigate criminal offences involving police officers, police corruption, serious police misconduct. B, to undertake inquiries into or audits of any aspect of police activities for the purpose of ascertaining whether there is police corruption or serious police misconduct or circumstances that may be conducive to both. The Act, of course, defines what is serious police misconduct, and these elements would fall there, as well as possible criminal offences involving police officers. The authority can also monitor an investigation conducted by any person or authority in relation to the matters I first mentioned at paragraph A above, which is investigations into criminal offences. So I was pleased that the police, who are an authority conducting investigations, are providing actively and on a real-time basis their reports to the PCA. The PCA can also gather evidence that may be used in the investigation of serious police misconduct and furnish such evidence to the Commissioner or the Commission, in this case as the Police Service Commission, for appropriate action. They can also gather evidence that can be used in the prosecution of a police officer involved in a criminal offence and furnish such evidence to the Director of Public Prosecutions. So just in those express statutory powers I've outlined, you will see how wide-ranging the PCA's powers and remit are. They then go on to say that notwithstanding any law, written law to the contrary, information and evidence obtained by the authority in the performance of its functions under this Act is confidential. So they've been protected by statutory confidentiality. It is then very noteworthy to take a look at Section 22 of the Act that sets out the powers of the PCA. Because very often there's a conversation that the PCA doesn't have sufficient powers. At Section 22(1), the authority has the powers of a commission of inquiry established under the Commissions of Inquiry Act, as if it were a commission of inquiry for purposes of that Act. Basically, a commission of inquiry has very, very wide-ranging powers to summon, to subpoena persons, to access certain information, etc. However, this Act goes further and says that the authority shall also have the power to require, amongst other things, any person within a specified time and in writing to provide any information or to answer any question which the authority considers necessary in connection with any investigation which the authority is empowered to conduct under this Act. It also gives the authority the power to require that any facts, matters, or documents relating to a complaint be verified, etc. It also gives the power for them to ask any person to produce within a specified time all books, records, accounts, reports, data stored electronically or otherwise, or any other document relating to the functions of any public body or authority, which of course the police service falls under. So in looking at that, the powers of the authority are sufficient for the current purposes, in my respectful opinion, and the PCA has all of the power to do what we, the population, are now requiring the PCA to do. The PCA also has the power under Section 31 for the purposes of an investigation. The authority may enter and inspect any premises occupied or used by a public body or authority in that capacity, inspect any document or other thing in the premises, or take copies of the documents. They then go on to provide powers of entry for private premises subject to a warrant, etc. I've taken the time this afternoon just to remind the population that the body that was chosen by the Parliament some time ago, this is Act number 8 of 2006, I believe it was proclaimed fully in 2007, is the Police Complaints Authority. As the person in the government who has the responsibility, I've ensured and I've verified that the PCA are conducting an investigation into these things, these matters, that the police are providing all of the information as necessary. And I, like everyone else, am waiting anxiously to see the outcome of these investigations, both parallel investigations. I was assured by the Commissioner of Police, and I believe he's put out a press release, that they are taking these investigations very seriously. And in fact, he drew to my attention, since his tenure, the number of police officers, I believe it's around 96, who have been charged for various offences, and a number of others suspended for committing certain acts. So citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, as these unfortunate incidents, meaning the circumstances surrounding the traumatic and untimely death of Miss Andrea Barrett, unfolded in front of us, and as we're now faced with these recent allegations, as the Minister of National Security and on behalf of the government, have taken the time to ensure and will continue to monitor, staying within the parameters of the law, that these active investigations are conducted and are carried out as we await the outcome of this stage of these investigations. And that really is what I wanted to address with you all this afternoon. There's just one side issue, really a postscript, that I'd seen it being suggested in all of the political mischief last week by a member of the opposition, that there were no helicopters available for the searches while this was going on. That is completely untrue. The helicopters are working and were available, and in fact, I asked for and saw the flight plans that were used, etc. So that was not ever an issue. Of course, in a forested area, when you fly overhead, there's very little you can see underneath the blanket of the top forest cover. What I'd like to assure the population of at this stage is, from that fateful Saturday when we all became aware of what we thought at the time was a kidnapping of Miss Andrea Barrett, all of the resources available were deployed, all of the resources available in national security were utilized. And unfortunately, this is where we are here today. And this afternoon, I just wanted to briefly provide you all with an update as to the government's position with respect to Morris and Belcon. Thank you. I'll take some questions at this stage, if there are any.
Hi, good afternoon, Minister. Yesterday evening, the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago would have recommended that foreign aid be brought in to investigate this matter. What's your response to that?
You know, that's one of the reasons I took the time to point out the law in these circumstances. There's been absolutely no justification for why the Police Complaints Authority isn't the body that should carry out the type of investigation I've just tried to outline. So at this stage, I don't think there's any need for foreign aid. Let's see what the PCA does, if the PCA has any further requests, because it also provides in the Act that the PCA has the ability to second people, to bring people in, and this type of thing. But at this stage, I don't think there's a need for that. And I was a little surprised to see that suggestion by the Law Association.
Right, now you said that certain units will be the next in line to get the body cams. How soon can we see that happening?
That is completely within the remit of the Commissioner of Police. He's in charge of the administration of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Okay, have you, as I have the mic here, have you received the report you requested into Andrea Barrett's autopsy?
I received a verbal report from the acting director of the Forensic Science Center. At the time, I've requested a report in writing, so I'm still awaiting that. I haven't seen it. It could be here somewhere in the ministry, but it hasn't arrived to me as yet. And now is a report as to the first autopsy carried out at the Forensic Science Center with respect to Ms. Barrett.
Do you think a third autopsy is needed, yeah?
I am not an autopsy expert by any means. I mean, what was described to me, and I await the outcome of the written report, it was satisfactory explanation. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay. And I saw some questioning why SORT played such a prominent role in this when there's an anti-kidnapping unit.
The anti-kidnapping unit was very much at the forefront of this investigation. SORT, as you know, is a vetted unit, and again, with the police service, that would have been a decision taken by the Commissioner of Police to utilize, as I said, all resources were utilized. From the time that we figured there could be excursions or investigations needed to take place into the forested areas, I immediately got hold of the CDS. It was late one night and asked him to get the defense force. So at these things, it's always what resources are available. But the anti-kidnapping squad, anti-kidnapping unit was a prominent unit acting in this matter from day one.
Mr. Young, good day. You made mention and went through the powers of the PCA, which we are appreciative of. However, the PCA, including Mr. West himself, has always noted that the powers are more reactionary and they do not necessarily give rise to the PCA's investigative team being on scenes or being notified immediately of scenarios that take place, which therefore limits their actual ability to investigate. While Commission of Inquiry does indeed have a vast range of powers, it does not necessarily cover the requests that have been made over the last 8+ years by the organization. So I was just wondering if you had any comments on that, per se.
Any comments?
Any reaction.
Okay, I mean, by definition, I don't know if reactionary is the right word, because by definition, investigation is always after the fact. So yes, I mean, I have heard over the period of time certain requests for additional powers. That's not what's before us now. I mean, certain additional powers, for example, getting onto a crime scene and having the ability to take up spent shells, this type of thing, that's not relevant to the current investigation. The government always hears what are the requests being made and considers and will consider such requests. But at this time, one of the reasons I took the time to outline some of the powers, these are the powers that are required in the present circumstances, and they are sufficient powers in the present circumstances.
Is it okay if I sidetrack for a little bit?
Let's try and finish off any questions on this now. I didn't come here to deal with a wide variety of other issues. Anyone else has any questions on what I've raised here this afternoon? There's no obligation on you to ask any, Mr. Douglas.
Okay. No, I am interested in reflections that the government may have had broadly after last week, because you had a whole country basically on Facebook saying, what can I do? How can I help? And I'm interested in baby steps, there is what we call low-hanging fruit. So I'll just put a couple of ideas forward to you. The thing, one of your colleagues was asked about the registration of PH cars and so on. So one of the things I was going to ask is, why could there not be a red flagging system that if somebody is a known troublemaker or pervert or something in an area, that the local police would red flag? You don't have to check out everybody's CV, but you get the idea.
Okay.
I had a couple of things.
Okay, well, let me deal with them one by one, Mr. Douglas. So first of all, the Minister of Works and Transport has been, and the Ministry of Works and Transport rather, has been working very hard on looking at the issue surrounding what we in Trinidad and Tobago call this PH driver system. I attended a meeting there last week along with the Commissioner of Police and some of the men and women in Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There was the Transport Commissioner, the Minister of Works, his permanent secretary, lawyers, the Attorney General. And I'll leave that for him to discuss at the appropriate time. But I was very happy to hear some of the initiatives that they intend to come with. My advice and suggestion to them was get it to Cabinet as quickly as possible for Cabinet to approve some sort of regulating system to deal with these types of drivers, etc. I think the second part of your question was actually something that had come up some time ago, which is the red flagging of persons. Again, that's up to the legislation. You would have heard the Attorney General talk about the Sexual Offenders Act, and one of the questions being raised now is, do you wait for the conviction? Should it be made public, and these types of things? Again, I'll leave that for the Attorney General to deal with specifically.
I mean, a simple thing that occurred to me, if somebody is guilty of a sexual offence, do they deserve to have a driver's permit? Because, you know, I would say that a car is probably deadlier than a gun. I don't know about the pepper spray, but a car, that mobility, do they deserve to have that?
I want to see you get quoted with a headline with that, Mr. Douglas. Yes.
Well, it kind of leads on to another thing. You know, you could, if you wanted to give us any update on the pepper spray. But there was another thing that occurred to me is in terms of human development, because I believe that our whole relationships in this country are, you know, according to demographics, the gender, the race, and so on. Do we need like a ministry for human development?
Yeah, Mr. Douglas, that is something, I mean, a multi-government agency approach already exists, and that would fall under one of the specific ministries or many of the ministries. Any determination as to what ministry should exist, that is above my pay grade and for the Prime Minister. So, Mr. Douglas, it seems like you're struggling for questions on this particular topic here. Shall we move along? Thank you. Any other questions on, yeah?
Just forgive me. I was just asked if it's in your remit to comment, if you are aware of any arrangement with SWORT and the Defence Force. We know that the SWORT was made up of retired officers, but we just want to know if there was any active Defence Force soldiers operating alongside the unit.
As you rightly said, that question is best directed to the Commissioner of Police.
All right. And the questions that I had that were not necessarily related to the aforementioned.
Well, I didn't come here to go outside of this remit, but go ahead. Let's see if there's something I can address.
I appreciate it greatly. One of the questions I was asked is any consideration being given to the yachting industry?
One of the questions you were asked to ask me.
And yeah, unfortunately. Okay. So.
Okay, so the yachting industry, this is with respect to exemptions, right?
Correct.
So there was a meeting with the representatives of the yachting industry, the Minister of Finance and myself some time ago. They have put forward certain proposals. As you all are abundantly aware, that must be them calling you to ask more questions. One of the things that we are looking at, the borders remain closed. Right now it's all about the safety, etc. We are looking at it. It does depend on, because their requests are for foreigners, etc., to be able to come in and these types of things, and is to work out the whole quarantine system. It will be looked at in the next few weeks. What I do propose is probably to have a meeting with themselves and the Ministry of Health in the next few weeks and see how it can be worked out, if it can be accommodated. I can't give a commitment at this stage.
No, it's fine. Appreciated. Sideline, there are also reports that there are about 30 junior officers in the Defence Force, lieutenants and second lieutenants, that have been due for promotions, have been waiting for about 7 years, in some cases, to be promoted. Just, is there any...
I have absolutely no information with respect to that. I know we have been doing a number of promotions. You all have seen, for example, last week, we promoted our Chief of Defence Staff, and we also promoted a person into the position of Vice Chief of Defence Staff.
Well, that one of the reasons we were asking, because the last time there was such disenfranchisement was roughly the 1970s, where there was some issues for those with the historical context. So we're just wondering if there's any concern.
I will look into it with the Defence Force, but normally those recommendations aren't made by the ministry. They're recommendations made to the ministry under a certain level, non-commissioned officers and these types of things. So I'll look into it. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time here this afternoon, and please continue to stay safe out there.